I'm a 24-year-old female, and this only happened to me recently. I was living with a guy called Ren, who I knew from high school. We bumped into each other a few years after graduation, and he asked me out. I had always fancied him at school, so I said yes, and we hit it off from there. We dated and eventually moved in together. One night, we had gone out for a few drinks, and a fight broke out in the bar we were in. Ren somehow got dragged into it and ended up getting punched in the face and was knocked out. This really changed him, and he just wasn't the same after that night. Ren was a small guy and not really a fighter, but after this happened, he said he wanted to start exercising and working out, as it scared him that if he ever was in a similar situation, that he wouldn't be able to protect me. I understand that from a male perspective, and so I supported him the best I could. Ren started working out, and within a few months had become obsessed and had put on a concerning amount of size in a short time frame. So much so that within a few months, it didn't even look like the Ren I knew. A friend of mine suggested he was on steroids. I had never seen him take anything, or even seen anything around the house, so I couldn't say, but although I don't know for sure, I think it's safe to say he was. Ren started to show signs of anger and seemed to develop a short temper, which I learned were signs of steroid abuse. This wasn't my Ren. This wasn't the guy I fell in love with anymore. I approached Ren and asked him if he was taking steroids, and he flipped. He told me I was ridiculous and screamed in my face. I thought Ren was going to hit me, and I felt scared for my life. He set out to build his confidence so he could protect me, and now I was starting to feel like it was him I needed protecting from. About 2 weeks after this incident, I found out that I was pregnant. I decided I didn't want to raise our child living with Ren, so I decided to leave one day while he was out at work. I arranged for some friends to come and help me move out and take me to my sister's house. I didn't want to give Ren any reason to lose it with me, so I left all the furniture and everything we had bought together. I just took what was mine. I know Ren deserved more than this, but I was scared to talk to him, so I sent him a text to say that I had left and it was over. A small part of me was hoping that maybe this would make him see the error of his ways, and that it might just be the thing he needs to calm down, but unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. I don't know how he knew, but he turned up at my friend Josh's house looking for me. Josh was one of the friends that helped me move to my sister's. Josh refused to tell Ren where I was, so he kicked in the front door and beat Josh up badly, as well as smashing up his house. The police were called by a neighbor, and after going crazy in the street, Ren was shot and killed. Ren never got to find out he was going to be a dad. I can't help but think that if I had dealt with the situation better, my newborn baby might still have a dad. When I was in my early 20s, I went out with this girl called Nita for about 2 years and finally decided to move in with her. Things were going well, and I wanted to take things to the next level. I'd never lived with a love interest before, so this was a really exciting time for me. About 2 months after I moved in, I started to notice little things from Nita that concerned me. She would want to know my whereabouts at all times and who I was with. Whenever I was with my friends, she would message them, making sure I was with them and not lying to her. She even messaged my mom, asking if we were together, as I hadn't answered my phone, and said she wanted to make sure I was okay. It soon started to become unbearable, and it started to feel like she didn't trust me. I talked to my mom about my situation and said I was thinking of calling it off, and my mom convinced me to sit down and try to talk it out with her. I sat down with Nita, who burst into tears and said that her ex had cheated on her and it had made her really insecure, and that it was just her way of letting me know she cared and wanted to make sure I was safe and loved. I felt sorry for her. I can't imagine the emotional damage of having someone you love cheat on you, and it's not something I had gone through myself. A few months went by and things seemed to get a little easier. She asked me to sign up to Find My iPhone so she could see where I was at all times, and said she would activate hers to let me know where she was. I had nothing to hide from her, but still felt like this was an invasion of my privacy, and I didn't want to, but I reluctantly agreed. One day, my friend and I went to pick up an RV we had purchased online, while Nita and my friend's wife waited at his home. It was a few hours' drive each way, and about an hour into the journey, we decided to stop for drinks and snacks. Within a few minutes, I received a message asking why we had stopped. I ignored the message and just left her to it. When we arrived back home, my friend's wife told me that Nita sat there and watched our entire journey there and back. Just a blip on the screen going down the highway for several hours. It was too much for me, and I decided to break it off with her and move out of her apartment. A few weeks after I had moved out, I saw a car similar to Nita's drive past my work. She had a very distinct car, and she knew you could see my desk from the road. Something told me to check the Find My iPhone app. I checked into the Find My iPhone app and saw that she had never made her profile private. I could see that she was just around the corner from my work, and so it was most likely her car. Over the next few weeks, I would check the app and would see that she would never be far away. She was either parked at the end of my street, in a cafe near my work. I would even see her driving past when I was walking home from work. Nita never made an attempt to talk to me or approach me, but it was creepy knowing she was always nearby and for what purpose. A few weeks went by and I started dating again. While driving to meet my date, I saw a car following me that looked like Nita's. I pulled into the parking lot at the local Cineplex where I was meeting my date and checked the Find My iPhone app to see that Nita had made her account private. I went to meet my date, constantly looking over my shoulder for Nita, but I didn't see her anywhere. We got our drinks and popcorn and went into the movie. About 30 minutes in, my date started hitting me on the arm. As I looked at her in confusion, I saw she had something around her neck. It took me a few seconds to process it, but as I stood up, I saw Nita was in the row behind us, and she had put a scarf over the chair and was strangling my date. I screamed at her to let go, and jumped over the chair and was able to force Nita to let go. I heard my date gasp for air as others started to look over to see what was going on. I shouted for someone to get security. Security ran in and saw me holding Nita to the floor, and not understanding the situation, pulled me off Nita and attempted to restrain me. Nita tried to run away, but thankfully, due to a man sitting 2 rows behind us, he shouted that it wasn't me and pointed to Nita as she ran. The movie was stopped and the police and paramedics were called. Nita was caught by security and was held until the police arrived. My date was okay, but was taken to hospital. She had friction burns and bruising on her neck where the scarf had been pulled, but she did make a full recovery. When I went back to my car in the parking lot, I found a note under the windscreen wiper that said, "If I can't have you, no one will." Nita ended up doing time and was required to get some psychiatric help as part of her sentence. I haven't seen her since her day in court, and to be honest, I hope I never see her again. I went out with this girl we'll call Jane for the purpose of this story. Me and Jane had been in a serious relationship for several years, and I even planned on proposing to her on Valentine's Day a few years back. Although she was the sweetest, kindest girl who I did genuinely fall in love with, she also had some very concerning behavioral issues. She would get angry for no reason and start shouting at me and throwing things around the room. She hit me on a couple of occasions and tried to tell our friends that I was the aggressor. She would complain she had no money, then when she got paid from her job, would spend all her money on drinking and makeup within a few days, only to then complain that she had no money again. This is fine when you're in your teens or even in your 20s, but we were in our early 30s. I wanted to settle down and start thinking about a family and buying a house, and as much as I loved Jane, it just seemed that she wasn't about to grow up anytime soon. I decided that I couldn't cope with her unpredictable behavior and decided to call it off. She didn't take it too well, but said she was going to break up with me anyway, so wasn't really bothered. Jane moved out, and soon after I started dating again. A few months went by, and I didn't really hear anything from Jane, and I started seeing this other girl, and after our third date, decided to go back to hers where I spent the night. About 4 in the morning, I received a call from Jane's friend saying she was with Jane in my bedroom and didn't know what to do. What do you mean you're in my room? Jane still had a key to my place and had let herself in. Her friend called me to say she only came with her to make sure Jane didn't do anything stupid. I lived with my family, including my brother, his wife, and their 2 children, so although this was a bit crazy, I gave her the benefit of the doubt that I thought she wouldn't really do anything to hurt anyone. I remember thinking she was most likely just drunk and hurting, especially if she found out I was dating someone new. I kinda made excuses as to why this was acceptable behavior when, on reflection, I realized it's not. I decided to just leave her to it rather than going home and getting into an argument at 4 in the morning with all my family asleep in their rooms. I didn't want to call the police, as I really didn't want the drama. Jane's friend messaged me to say they were now laying in my bed waiting for me to get home. I ignored the message and went back to sleep, thinking whatever happens, happens. She loved my family and knew she wasn't a threat to them. I didn't receive any more messages that night. I arrived home the next day at about midday. I went into my bedroom and everything had been moved and thrown into the middle of my room. On the wall, written in red lipstick, it read, "I could have killed you in your sleep." I didn't call the police, but I did change the locks. I've not seen anything of Jane since that night, but I did bump into her friend a few weeks back. Jane was recently arrested and charged for stabbing a guy she had been dating. She apparently broke into his house one night while he was sleeping and stabbed him 3 times in the leg. He was okay and lived to tell the tale, but it just goes to show how, even when you really know someone, you can still really misjudge what they're capable of.